Many years have passed since Dick's father left him with his mother, but this trauma remained forever in his soul. Now, he remembered his mother's tears, her confusion, misunderstanding, and wondering how to move on. As for him, he was experiencing such a difficult feeling of disconnection from reality because of what had happened. He couldn't believe that Dad could do this just because he liked some other woman. Dick had replayed this episode in his head many times in adulthood, but he did not change his opinion. He will be a good father to his children, and they will not have to go through what he went through. And a good husband for the one he chooses to marry. When he first saw Melanie, he immediately thought that she was the one. But until the moment of their wedding, several more years passed. And now, remembering all the years they had lived together, he thought that fulfilling the promise made to himself was not difficult at all. After all, he loved his family very much. This year, he will definitely try not to forget about their wedding anniversary. Melanie was finishing her makeup in front of her favorite dressing table with quick movements. There were only finishing touches left, but she was already a little late for work. She wasn't particularly worried. Anyway, the boss was always late. If you came in 10 to 15 minutes late, no one would notice. The apartment was unusually quiet, all because Dick had already taken the children to kindergarten. He was only in the office for lunch today. Early in the morning, Melanie noticed that for some reason, Dick had grabbed a bunch of keys for their country house from the closet. She accidentally saw him hurriedly put them in his pocket. "Why do you need those keys to our country house?" she asked. Dick hesitated. I'll drop in there before work," Dick finally said. "I left some tools there, and a colleague asked me to borrow them. Can you fill up the pool at the same time? We will go there this weekend, and the water will have already warmed up," Melanie suggested and hurried to the kitchen. The children had to be woken up already. She wanted to have time to drink a cup of coffee in peace and quiet. "No, I can't fill up the pool. I'm literally going to run there for 10 minutes, tools and back," Dick said. "Well, we'll fill it up together this weekend," Melanie sighed. The morning went on as usual, and the children, as usual, did not want to wake up and go to the garden. Melanie gave the role of negotiator to Dick. Dick was always better than she was at influencing their daughters. Father of the Year, coped with a difficult task. And now, for a few minutes later, the bathed girls were already sitting in the living room waiting for the traditional morning toasts with sweet tea. And how does he do it? Melanie wondered once again. She herself could not boast of such patience and diplomatic talent. And her sense of humor, which Dick actively used in communicating with children, refused her in the morning. Melanie completed her makeup by covering her lips with cherry gloss, admired the result a little in the mirror, and winked at herself. Yes, after all, he was lucky to have her as his wife, and he himself often said so. Never skimped on compliments and gifts. In all the 10 years of family life, Melanie thanked fate for Dick more than once. She felt good with him, calm and fun. But other colleagues often complained about their spouses, and Melanie even felt uncomfortable because she could not support such a conversation. After all, both Dick and her were satisfied with absolutely everything. It had been 10 years since the wedding, and he had proved many times in practice that Melanie made the right choice by becoming his wife. He was wonderful to her when they dated. She was a pretty girl, and at the time she had a lot of male suitors. But she did not experience the pleasant feeling of kinship of souls and confidence with the others as she did with Dick. Of course, Dick had minor flaws, but Melanie even liked it. Otherwise, she would feel too imperfect against the background of an ideal husband. For example, Dick was bad at remembering dates, even about the upcoming birthdays of his relatives, Melanie reminded him. So today, Dick forgot about the important holiday of the decade of their anniversary, but Melanie was not offended because she knew the peculiarity of her husband and perfectly saw how important their family was to him. Melanie was expecting a call sometime around lunchtime when Dick finally called. She was looking forward to how he would blame himself for forgetfulness in a guilty voice and, of course, arrange some surprise in the evening. In the office, she was immediately wrapped up in business. It turned out that a check from Washington is expected the other day. Melanie was overwhelmed with work, so she skipped lunch. It was only in the late afternoon that she finally sorted out her urgent tasks and poured herself a cup of coffee. At that moment, her phone beeped. Melanie accepted the call without even looking at the screen, and she was sure it was Dick. I remembered their anniversary and called with congratulations. To hear a familiar and encouraging voice was just what was needed now. But a neighbor at the country house called, who lived next to them with her husband and children. They had daughters about the same age, and this brought the neighbors closer together, turning them into good friends. Families often arranged joint trips to the countryside, fishing, kebabs, and gatherings around the campfire. Such events were always fun and noisy. Melanie's friend Jenny started the conversation. "Hi, how are you doing? You sound really tired." "Hi, I'm just starting to have lunch at work," Melanie replied. "Wow, it's almost 5 o'clock. "Well, yes, it happens sometimes," Melanie said. "And how do you keep up with everything?" Jenny asked. She did not work, and she was busy with the house and children. "I don't understand it myself," Melanie admitted. "I don't even know how to ask," Jenny hesitated, clearly not daring to start a conversation on some awkward topic. "Do you need to borrow money? Don't be shy. Tell me how much you need, and I'll help you out," Melanie said. "No, that's not the point. Just wanted to ask. I wanted to ask," Jenny said. Melanie began to get annoyed and said, "I don't have time to talk for a long time. I need to have a snack faster and get back to work." "All right," Jenny decided. "Don't you live with Dick anymore?" "What?" Melanie almost fell out of her chair from the unexpected question. "What makes you think that?" "Well, he arrived in the morning," Jenny spoke excitedly. "Yes, not alone, with some woman and 2 children, and with a bunch of things. They were unloaded from the car for a long time, as if it's like moving." "I don't understand," Melanie whispered. "What things? What woman?" "Beautiful," Jenny said. "Full face of makeup, curvy, and smiling all the time. And your husband was talking to her incessantly, and also joyful. It looks like they're moving in together. I think they're going to live here. I thought he'd found another woman for himself, and even with children. I decided that you kicked him out of the apartment, so he came here with them all." "Jenny, I don't understand anything at all." "So you weren't even aware of it?" Jenny was surprised. Well, who would have thought? It's not like your husband at all. Let me send you a picture of them now, and you'll see for yourself." Melanie leaned back wearily in her chair. The conversation with Jenny seemed to knock her feet off the ground. Dick seemed to her the most reliable person in the world, and she was confident in him already more than in herself. And now this call. And ironically, on their anniversary. Maybe he brought his sister. Melanie seized on the saving thought. She just has 2 children, and with her husband, always quarreling, suddenly left him. Dick invited them to the country house to stay. He just didn't have time to warn her. Then the phone beeped again. The promised photo from Jenny arrived. Dick was in the picture, and a completely unknown woman was next to him. Indeed, a very spectacular lady was in the photo. He took out huge suitcases from the trunk, looked at the beauty with happy eyes, smiled. She, too, was clearly in high spirits. Tears came to Melanie's eyes, because she felt his full betrayal. If Dick decided to live with this woman, then everything has been going on for a long time. But as a wife, she didn't notice anything before. After all, there must have been some signs. Really, she is so naive. How can you not notice that her husband has a serious relationship on the side? In fact, the second family since they decided to live together. Melanie did not know what to do. At first, she wanted to call her husband and tell him that she knew everything, and then she decided to act more effectively. It was decided that she would go to the country house in person and make her unfaithful spouse and this destroyer of families feel guilty and humiliated. It was not easy to ask the boss for time off, but in the end, of course, he agreed. "Okay, go solve your family problems. You look like you've seen a ghost. You don't have any work today anyway." On the way to the country house, Melanie called her mother and asked her to pick up the girls from kindergarten. She most likely won't have time until 7 p.m. today, and the scene promised to be ugly and loud. After all, she was unlikely to be able to go for the children. "Dick has already asked me to pick them up. Of course I will go for my granddaughters with pleasure," Melanie heard her say in response. That's how strange it is, she thought. Did Dick foresee this situation and take care in advance that the children were taken out of the garden during the time? Of course, he turned out to be a pathetic husband, but he still remained a caring father. Melanie drove without being careful on the road and almost got into an accident a couple of times because her thoughts were spinning in her head. Her world, which seemed happy, strong, and unshakable, was collapsing. How could he? What to do now, and why didn't she notice anything? Questions crowded in her head and did not allow her to concentrate on the road. Burning tears were coming to her eyes, and now she would join the ranks of grumpy, abandoned women dissatisfied with life and men. Melanie used to think that we were to blame for our failures. They could not build a harmonious relationship with their spouses or somehow behaved incorrectly, and now she was one of them. At the beginning of the summer, Melanie and Dick allowed their daughters to decorate the high fence around the country house to their taste. They enthusiastically got down to business, and now the fence was covered with butterflies painted with acrylic paints on both sides, flowers and princesses. Seeing the creation of the children, Dick jokingly grabbed his head, and it seemed to her how cute everything was, and the pink beauty was unreal. Melanie, let's give our daughters a brother. Otherwise, we clearly lack in design, cars, and robots, Dick had joked. Brother, brother, the girls chanted then, clapping their hands. They obviously liked their father's idea, and Melanie didn't mind at all, and it wasn't scary with a husband like Dick, or that's what she thought. It's a good thing they didn't rush from plans to action. Otherwise, it would have been even harder now. This idyllic scene unfolded just a month and a half ago. Surely Dick was already secretly dating another woman. He had a relationship on the side and started talking about a third child? How could it have been 10 years to live with such a hypocrite next to her, and also consider him an ideal husband at the same time? Either she was completely stupid or her husband was a brilliant actor, one or the other. Melanie stopped at the neighbor's gate, got out of the car, with her heart pounding loudly, and approached her country house. Now she will have to ring her own doorbell as an outsider, and what if this woman opens it? Then what to do? But she didn't have to press the bell button. The door opened by itself. Dick hurried out into the street in shorts, a faded t-shirt, and old flip-flops. He had a package in his hands, apparently heading to a local store. When he saw Melanie, he was stunned and said, "What are you doing here?" With a confused smile, the man approached his wife and looked at her attentively and anxiously. "Did something happen? Why do you look like that?" He spoke softly. "Is everything okay with the kids?" I'm just going to see Jenny," Melanie lied badly. She could not begin the difficult conversation. She had thought out a heartfelt speech while she was driving, but now she saw Dick, and for some reason all the words flew out of her head. Dick was surprised and acted strangely. "You said you'd only take the tools for a colleague," Melanie reminded. "It's already evening and you're still here." "Yes, my plan has failed," Dick said thoughtfully. "I was waiting for you a little later." "What? Waiting?" "Yes, everything should have happened a little differently, but you know what? Well, it's okay. Wait a bit in the car, or at Jenny's, and I'll be right there." With these words, Dick disappeared through the door, not forgetting to turn the lock. Stunned, Melanie leaned against the fence. She did not expect such impudence, even in the current situation. Of course, her husband greatly disappointed her and made it clear that she was mistaken in him. But to slam the door in her face? To make her wait for something on the street? By the way, what was he doing? Morally preparing his new lover for a meeting with an angry wife? Melanie moved resolutely to the door. This was too much. Now she will face them both. She will bang on the gate until she gets inside, if necessary. She will climb over the high fence or call the police. Anger gave her strength and confidence. Just not to lose confidence again. Melanie had almost reached the door when it opened by itself. Dick was standing on the threshold, smiling. In a moment, he managed to pull himself together. The husband looked at her with a smile and held out his hand to her, inviting her into the garden. Melanie, who did not understand anything, looked around in surprise. The place was transformed beyond recognition. Garlands were hung everywhere. Tall figures depicting fairy tale characters could be seen here and there, and right under the spreading apple tree there was a table set for two. As soon as Melanie entered, beautiful music rang out. She turned around and saw 3 violinists in concert costumes next to the pool. And it seemed so amazing and unreal that Melanie was simply speechless. Dick was beside her, leading her by the hand to the table. The same woman came out on the porch of the house. She was the woman from the photo Jenny had sent her. She was wearing a long dress to the floor, and in her hands she was holding a microphone. "What's this?" Melanie managed to squeeze out. "This is my surprise for you, for us. I purposely pretended in the morning that I forgot about the anniversary as usual so that you wouldn't suspect anything. Everything should have gone differently. A white limousine would have come to work for you and brought you here, and on the way you would have changed into a dress like a princess. I chose it myself. I think you'll like it. I wanted to make this day fabulous and unforgettable for us." "You did this for me?" Melanie hugged her husband and tried to hold back tears. This time she wanted to cry from relief and happiness. And then there was a wonderful show in honor of the wedding anniversary. It was done by the woman from the photo. Live music, a magician, a guest singer. And then the children that Jenny saw performed an acrobatic performance. Melanie had changed her mind so much in the few hours since Jenny's call, but she certainly hadn't expected this. Later, when it got dark, there were bright fireworks. Melanie looked at the multicolored flowers blooming in the black sky, and she was happy again. Dick gave her a fairy tale. It's a good thing she didn't have time to ruin everything.